I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast recorded 21 kilometers under the surface of the Earth, because this week we watched The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood.
Written by Chris Chibnall.
Directed by Ashley Way.
And aired on May 22nd and 29th, 2010.
The Silurians are back in action.
And better than ever. Actually, that's a lie. They're
well,
not.
I think their costumes are way better than they've ever been.
Their costumes are better than ever. That's the only way in which they're better than ever.
Let me just get my notes out here. Okay, so production information is exceptionally boring again, as I suspect it's going to be for every story that's not written by Stephen Moffat somehow.
Well, here's the thing. I thought this story would have way more interesting production info because they're bringing the Silurians back, but no, really, it was just the decision to bring the Silurians back was like, well, we're gradually introducing characters from the classic show. I guess it's time for the Silurians to
make their reappearance.
To try and take over the Earth again. And fail again.
I guess it's time to redo Inferno featuring the Silurians.
Actually, a lot of this took from, Inferno, but also the Silurians and just the Third Doctor era in general.
Which was apparently intentional on Chibnall's part. He was like, I want to make this feel like a real Third Doctor-ish story. Because I guess the Silurians are heavily associated with the Third Doctor, which makes sense.
Of course.
Although the Sea Devils was... Or not the Sea Devils, sorry. Warriors of the Deep was Fifth Doctor, but...
No, it wasn't. Warriors of the Deep was Third Doctor.
No, that's the Sea Devils.
Oh,
Sea Devils.
Okay, Sea Devils. Oh, yeah,
you made the same mistake I did.
Yeah, Warriors of the Deep was...
That was the one with the Merca.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Fifth Doctor. So a lot of this is very Third Doctor-esque, or just directly lifted straight from the Third Doctor.
Yeah, not a good decision, but we'll get there.
No, I think it was fine. Just fine. So apparently Chris Chibnall, I guess, didn't think he was going to write for the show again after 42, because he wrote 42 back in series 3. But Moffat was like, no, I want you to come back, because when Moffat called him back, he had just wrapped up his tenure, I guess, as one of the head writers on Torchwood. Season 3? Series 3? Doesn't really matter. Anyway, there's not a lot of fun stories about the writing, because he wrote it and he was like, okay, cool, it's done. And then they were like, cool, we're going to film it now.
This went through a couple drafts as usual.
Yeah. This was filmed pretty early in the production block, after 11th Hour, but before Vampires of Venice and Amy's Choice.
Yeah, and you know what? It shows on screen because it feels like, and I think it's actually really noticeable when usually it's not, but it feels like, Matt Smith and Karen Gillan, or however you pronounce her last name, just aren't there yet. They're just not there yet.
Arthur Darvill hasn't figured it out yet either. Apparently Arthur Darvill didn't know if he would be coming back for more stories set after this.
I know. The ending. I know it's going to sound weird given how much I have sort of disliked Rory so far, but I honestly think Rory was one of the only good things about this story.
Yeah, yeah.
Even like I just said, even Matt Smith and Karen Gillan were pretty weak in this.
So it was filmed.
They did a lot of location stuff. They went to some actual steel plant or whatever.
Church. They used that for the church.
Oh, yeah, a lot of the things you see on screen, you're like, okay, this is a church or this is a house, and you're like, I wonder how they achieved that. And you're like, when you actually look it up, they went to a church or a house or just a field or whatever.
Yeah, they started with the filming at the church, and they ended with filming stuff for the Silurian city.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, this stuff that's under the earth, they actually did go under the earth. No.
They dug 21 kilometers under the earth.
Yeah, they just jumped down that Russian hole. No, I'm just kidding. You know about that hole, right?
Yeah.
The Russians, the Soviet Union, decided to dig.
Yeah, for no readily apparent reason.
Well, it's the same thing here.
Well, they
just wanted to see what was down there and be better than the Americans. But no, you can't actually jump down that hole. If you look it up, it's only a couple inches across.
Well, apparently this story was badly overrunning, so they cut a couple scenes, including a scene which referenced the fact that they were being paid to dig deeper, although that only provides marginally more explanation for why they're digging this hole than was provided in the story already.
We'll get to like how the first 15 minutes of this all plays out when we get to the episode itself, because it's not good.
Speaking of Russians going down holes, this
Oh
is
God,
really,
where is this going to go?
really terrifying. A gif I just thought of this Russian dude who finds this hole in the earth and he just crawls in, and then he just goes in there, and you just like, what? And the hole's like just barely big enough to fit his body, and he just slides in, and you're like, why would you do that?
How do you know he's Russian just from a GIF? Is he like waving a
good
Russian
point.
flag?
The title of the GIF indicated that he was Russian, and for some reason I just believed it. So, would people really go on the internet and just lie about things?
But we're also not mentioning the bigger edit to the script, which was an entire alien creature
they
just
chopped
cut
out a
from
whole
the
alien,
script,
which had
was the Armosaur.
Yeah, the brilliant name of Armosaur, which when I hear, I just think of like a dinosaur with like human
armor.
arms. But that's not what it is. Apparently, it was supposed to be like an armadillo-like creature, but then the BBC budget guys came back and were like, yo, we've only got the budget to make these Silurian costumes or the Armosaurs. We can't do both. And Moffat was like, just cut the Armosaurs
Just cut the
then.
Silurians. We don't need them.
Cut the Silurians. And so they came up with this bio-programmed soil nonsense.
Hey, when you gotta cut corners.
It just reminded me of the
seaweed.
The invisible monsters.
The Vizians. There are a couple of invisible monsters. The Vizians are the ones that come to mind first.
Ones.
But there were a couple other ones too.
The Spiridons were invisible too, weren't they?
Yeah, from Planet of the Daleks, I think.
Yeah, it just reminded me of that. Just an invisible monster, because they were trying to cut budget, so they're like, well, let's just not have a monster at all.
It's not invisible, it's just the soil.
Yeah, even worse. There's a story about one of the scenes that they were filming too, which I'm just going to put here because it's production information, and then we can go into the plot. But when Amy gets sucked into the soil, apparently the way they filmed that was like they had I'm forgetting what the word is now completely.
Describe it.
But it's like a one-way hole blocker thing that only allows stuff to pass through
chute?
one way. Kind of like a chute. That's not the word I'm looking for, though I will remember the word we're looking for like 4
funnel?
hours after we finish recording.
Funnel?
But in a circuit, it's a inductor. Inductor? Whatever. Anyway, so it only allows stuff to pass through one way. That's the whole point of this. And then she was like standing on a box, and they just lowered the box while she went through the dirt. And apparently they had to plug her ears so the dirt wouldn't get in her ears.
Yeah.
And also apparently she was terrified at filming this scene, but figured that was okay because Amy would have been terrified too in the real life situation they were portraying here. So she just went with it.
Sure.
And it's a diode in a circuit. The diode only allows current to pass through it one way. Anyway, got to get that right. Anyway, now on to the plot, I think, unless you have anything else.
No. The story starts with a guy reading to a kid, and
Mo and I don't remember the kid's
I
name.
don't remember any of their names.
I remember the dad's name is Mo because Ambrose spends the entire story going, "Where's Mo?"
So the kid's trying to read, but he's obviously like dyslexic or something.
Yeah, dyslexic. Doctor says dyslexic.
Yeah, well, later on he's like, I'm dyslexic, and first off he's like,
Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot. It's pretty obvious that he's dyslexic from this initial scene, but then Mo has to go do something else.
Go to work.
Which is like 20 feet away.
Yeah, he's on the night shift apparently.
It's down the hill. They've made some breakthroughs at this plant that they're
in like Cardiff?
It's in one of the, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's one of those very hard to pronounce British locations. It's spelled CWT.
Isn't it in Wales?
I don't know.
So isn't it one of those very hard to pronounce Welsh names?
Well, Wales is in Britain.
Yeah, true.
You got
I guess when people
Wales,
say-
England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Not all of
Not-
Ireland, just
not
Northern
Republic of
Ireland. And he goes to work, and we meet the people at work who are, I think it's Nazreen and Tony.
Yeah, and they've made some great breakthrough. Literally, I guess they've made it to like the 21-kilometer mark. They're like we
Digging.
said before, they're just digging.
Yeah.
And yeah, stuff was cut out of the script as to why they were digging. But like just the fact that we get nothing here really just sets up this episode for failure in one way.
Well, I didn't really mind, honestly. I would have minded even less if this was just a one-episode story, like I really think it could have been.
Yeah. Well,
Because that was the thing.
another Third Doctor callback. It's like, this could have been way shorter.
That was the thing when I watched this. I was like, I actually kind of enjoyed that. But then 2 hours later, I was like, hang on a minute. Nothing happened.
Well, you think about the first 15 minutes of this where they set up what these people are, and the Doctor and Amy and Rory are, they make it there, and there's just stuff in this, like, looking at the future version of Amy and Rory across the field and stuff like that. And you think, I just thought I was at like the 15, 16-minute mark, and I just realized, like, what is this? Like, what is this setup is just so weak.
Well, they were trying to keep the Silurians a secret, I guess, because you'll notice Silurian isn't in the title of
Yeah.
either of these, and then the reveal of the Silurian is supposed to be like his big thing,
Yeah.
sort of. We forgot to mention that in redesigning the Silurians, they removed the third eye, which I guess is something to make
We get
a point of later, but apparently Moffat was like, third eye is kind of associated with Davros now, so maybe we should just remove it.
we get some sort of Silurian vision, or maybe it's just the Doctor using the glasses.
No, we get some Silurian vision, and it uses the sound effects from Predator. I'm pretty sure when they do the Silurian vision in this,
Yeah, I don't remember.
sounds exactly like Predator, which I only know because we watched Predator like
Yeah,
a week
you know
before
what?
watching this.
The sound design of Predator wasn't like strong enough for me to remember the sound effects that they used. So.
Well, the only sound effect I remember from Predator is the damn Predator vision because it was the only sound effect that was in all 3 movies. Anyway, we'll put a link to Predator Vision in the show notes.
Speaking of sound, I watched these episodes on Amazon with the subtitles on, and some of the like subtitles that they give for sounds are like just hilarious. Like the sound of someone being pulled under the earth, or like computer noises, and just stuff like that. And like, all right, those aren't exact examples, but there's just stuff like that. What's weird is the subtitles in this also capitalize future us when Amy goes like, oh, look, it's future us. That's capitalized.
Well, do the subtitles capitalize people's names?
Yeah, of
Okay, then
course.
that's probably why.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, it was just weird.
I don't find it that weird.
I do.
This is like, I guess it's like their quote
their
name.
title?
Yeah, their title.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't have capitalized it if I wrote the subtitles.
Well, anyway, a hole opens up the ground. Mo gets sucked into the ground. So, rip Mo. I put Mo on my death count at first. It was like, Mo, question mark? But turns out he's not dead.
Yeah, turns out he just gets experimented on by a mad scientist.
Yeah,
who they just
Mo
forgive
probably
for
has
this.
PTSD after this.
Yeah, I mean,
Since he said he was conscious when they did it.
I didn't get, or I got it, but like, really, they make Malachi out to be like this great guy at the end when he's been like dissecting and experimenting on humans for hundreds of years. Left a permanent scar on Mo's chest. His entire abdomen, actually.
Well, we're going to get there. Amy and Roy arrive, and the
so
doctor's
does the
like, look, it's
doctor."
Rio. Yeah, just Amy and Roy arrive. And the doctor's like, look, it's Rio.
It just, the TARDIS materializes and he's like, and stay out.
He kicks them out like Ian and Barbara in Reign of Terror.
It was just Ian. He was totally okay with Barbara.
Well, that's true. That's probably because Barbara didn't do anything.
So they walk out and they're like, hey, it's Rio.
And they're like,
kidding,
no,
it's
never mind.
Britain.
It's just
It's
Wales.
just a graveyard in Wales.
And like future Amy and Roy over there off on another hill, and the doc's like, that's weird. I guess you guys came to check up on yourselves, like after
Yeah.
you retire. And then
I mean, not sure how they realized it was them. I guess they just knew or
recognize
something.
their outfits. Although when you know how Amy and Roy get written out, it becomes increasingly Nearly impossible for it to be them, basically.
Is it
Actually,
just going to be, I mean, don't tell me, but is it just going to be something where they go back to every previous story and they've been like lurking in the background or something like that? Wow. I said don't tell me, but fine, whatever.
I said it becomes impossible, not likely. It becomes impossible that it's them, so when you know how they're written out. I wrote this in my notes. I wrote how, and then I wrote the name of the story in which they're written out, so don't read my notes if you don't want to know when they're written out. But basically when they get written out, it becomes nearly impossible for this to actually be them. So, on the other hill. Unless it happens before they get written out, which is something that we'll talk about when they get written out, I guess.
Could just be random people on the hill and they're like, hey, look, it's us in the future.
Well, here's the thing is that clearly this was included. Obviously, when this was included, Moffat didn't know how he was going to write them out yet. But this was clearly included so that when the thing that happens to Rory...
Yeah, I mean, I get that. And that's kind of... It's good in that sense. I like it when when it comes back at the end and it's just Amy.
Right. But
I just questioned it at the beginning.
It does create issues of continuity. And...
So they're in this graveyard and there's some bluegrass just in the area.
Isn't it a cemetery? I found out this week the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard, and the difference is that one of them is like connected to a church and one of them is freestanding. And I think a graveyard is freestanding. I think a cemetery is connected to a church. So I think technically because there's a church here that this is actually a cemetery.
All right. I mean, whatever.
I mean, have you never been curious about what the difference between a graveyard and a cemetery is?
No.
Well,
I haven't.
Well, now you know. So.
Well, like, you can call any cemetery a graveyard, like just a yard of graves, but like maybe
I guess.
It might be like every rectangle, every square is a whatever it is. Every square is a rectangle.
Every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square.
So the doctor's like, no, that's a little strange that there's all this, blue grass in the area.
Right.
And it turns out, I mean, that's the one thing we do get as to why they're drilling, is that there are minerals here that haven't been seen for millions of years. And that's it.
Which apparently they can detect because there's blue grass there, which is indicative of the minerals they're mining.
Yeah, it should just come to the Midwest or whatever the bluegrass states are, Kentucky or something.
Well, are those named bluegrass because there's actually bluegrass there, or is it because of the music genre bluegrass?
Well, I don't know. What if the genre is named after the grass?
What is the genre named after? Because when you think about it, that's a really weird thing to name a music genre bluegrass. Well,
I don't know. Maybe it's related to blues or something.
I don't know.
No idea.
No idea.
So people have been getting grave napped.
Yeah, well, so Rory goes back. Rory takes something back to the TARDIS, but I don't remember what.
It's the engagement ring. He realizes that Amy is wearing the engagement ring. He's like, hey, don't lose that. Like, you shouldn't be wearing it. You might lose it or might slip off your finger.
People wear their wedding bands to all sorts of places. And it's not like they're expecting to run into danger here, but whatever.
Yeah, but like, they probably will, and they do. So he decides to go put it back in the TARDIS. And when he comes out of the TARDIS, we see Ambrose and Elliot. And they're like, hey, glad you're finally here.
Yeah.
And
they think he's a policeman.
Yeah, you get right away they think he's a cop because Elliot's like, where's his uniform? And Ambrose is like, don't be stupid, he's plain clothes.
But right off the bat, she's an instantly unlikable character because she's just like berating Elliot for this completely legitimate question, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, at the end of the story, Ambrose is the one person in like the past like season and a half of Doctor Who that I just really just dislike as a character.
Just ruins everything.
I just really dislike as a person. And I think they do a really effective job of making her unlikable. They do a less effective job of trying to make her sympathetic as to why she does what she does. So maybe that's why she's so unlikable.
Well, I don't know.
But, well, I have more things to say on that later on. But they basically show Rory his grave because for some bizarre reason, she's like, everybody in my family wants to be buried in the same mass grave here. Well, not her family, but everybody in this one family in town wants to be buried in the same plot of ground. And they were like, yeah, so when we went to bury the latest death, all the bodies were gone.
Well, not even just the bodies, also the coffins were gone because, Rory, they see the dug up grave and Rory goes down and jumps in it and stuff, and there's nothing there. And Elliot has this theory. He's like, well, the graves were undisturbed from the top, and they were undisturbed from the sides, so they must have come down from the bottom.
And Rory ignores the obvious question once again. Why does this family all want to be buried in the same damn plot of ground?
I don't think it's an obvious question. I didn't even think of that.
That was the first thing I thought of.
It's not even like they're not even really in a town. They're in like a very small settlement, like a village.
Yeah.
Or even smaller.
There's a lot of undeveloped land there they can use for that cemetery.
I think it's just, maybe just a small community that formed around this drilling project.
I mean, probably, but at the same time, Ambrose explicitly says these people wanted to be buried in the same plot. It's not like a space consideration. It's not like a consideration for them not having enough graves. It's like these people wanted to be buried in the same plot.
Sure,
that's what she says.
I mean, we don't really know the answer. Maybe they've just been living there for hundreds of years and that's their place or whatever.
But anyway, the Doctor and Amy go to investigate the drilling site, and the ground starts opening again because they restarted the drill. And they stop the drill, and the Doctor's like, you stopped the drill, right? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, why can I still hear drilling? Amy gets sucked into the ground.
Right, he realizes the sound's coming from underneath the ground, and that's when Amy starts getting sucked into the ground.
Actually, that's in reverse order. Amy gets sucked into the ground. They go to turn off the drill to stop Amy from getting sucked into the ground, but they're too slow.
Yeah,
then Amy gets sucked in.
Anyway.
Then the Doctor's like, why is there still drilling if the drill stopped? And they're like, well, we don't know. Because the drilling upwards, the Doctor says. Then they're like, okay. And then the Doctor's like, this is bioprogrammed soil. And then they're like, that's not even possible. Yeah. There's like a budding romance between Tony and Nasreen.
And here's the thing about that. That's also an earlier callback to, maybe the Third Doctor's era, or, just the classic show in general is just the shoehorned in romance.
Well, as soon as they started digging, I was like, wait a minute, is this Inferno? Because the whole thing about Inferno was they were like, we're going to dig this big hole for the Inferno project. And then they accidentally hit something.
They accidentally mess everything up and all die.
They accidentally beam into an alternate universe where UNIT is evil and Britain's ruled by a tyrannical dictator and the Doctor doesn't exist. And in that universe, the Doctor actually shunts himself to the other universe where it turns out the drilling project causes an explosion that wipes out all life on Earth. So he goes back to the regular universe yo, we gotta stop, guys. Inferno was...
there's something environmental about that, and this, to some extent.
Yeah.
But, we talk about the scene with Amy getting sucked down. We talked about it earlier, is Gillen being like, yeah, I was really scared, but so was Amy, so it all worked out. But, I actually really didn't like that scene. I thought it was really underacted on everyone's part, honestly.
Well, the Doctor's really underacting, being concerned about her.
Yeah, Matt Smith did not do a good job in this, in my opinion. Really, the acting is subpar from everyone except for Darvill.
Yeah, Rory. My man.
Yeah, I'm kind of warming. This story kind of made me warm up to Rory. Maybe not because he was the best, but because everyone else was not as good.
Yeah, I knew it would. Just wait till later.
Well, also they make him a lot more awesome than he's really ever had the president to be.
Yeah, the president. Well, so now that Amy's gone, the Doctor's like, well, we're gonna figure out what's digging up towards us, and they go outside, and all of a sudden the Silurians put down a force field. Apparently, according to Chibnall, this was supposed to be reminiscent of the force field that Daemons put over that tiny little village in the Daemons.
Well, there were a couple of force fields in the Third Doctor's era, and the Doctor actually, before they even run outside, he calculates how much time they have left before whatever is coming up to the surface actually gets there, and this begins the most productive 12 minutes in human history. They do so much in this 12-minute time frame.
You can just overlay the A-Team theme on this, and it would basically fit right in. The A-Team was a show from the 80s.
I think people know what the A-Team is, but yeah, go ahead and explain.
But what I'm referencing is that basically in every episode they'd have this building montage where in 2 hours they would construct this entire barricade or something, and they would play the theme music over it and be this long awesome building montage, but then no time at all would have passed, and you'd be like, wait a minute, how do they do all this in an hour?
So what happens is they go outside and they decide to go to the church and the church shed and stuff and arm themselves. And meanwhile, the Silurians, or whoever this is, we don't know who it is yet.
Yeah, they
but they're-
decide to hide out in the church, which is, throw back to Father's Day, the older it is, the stronger it is.
Well, Silurians decide to put up this force field that doesn't let any like light in or out. It like shrouds them in darkness or something, and they can't get out.
Well, that's how the Doctor calculates how long the Silurians are going to take, is because they put up the force field and he analyzes it, and it's like, oh, it's designed to like solidify in 14 minutes or whatever, which means they're probably coming up here 14
Yeah.
minutes.
And we get some lines during this, and I'm going to talk about this later, that really make this feel like an introduction episode to Doctor Who for some reason. Like, we get the line with, like, what's-her-face, Nazarene, being like, well, the Doctor's the only one I trust. And then we get this other line later on where the Doctor's like, I don't use weapons. I never do. Get those out of the car or whatever.
Well, yeah, because Ambrose loads up all these weapons she found throughout the village and shoves them in the car, and the Doctor's like, no, I don't use weapons. She kind of looks longingly at this table that's sitting on top.
Yeah. And, I mean, there's also even this other line later on when they get underground is like the Doctor says, I don't do this every day. I do it every other day. And just this stuff that's like makes it seem as if this episode's catering towards people who just aren't familiar with what Doctor Who even is, like in concept.
Possibly.
There's also a lot of failed humor in this, like that line. And there was more. I don't really remember what the sort of quote-unquote jokes were.
I didn't even notice any jokes in this, so that
Well,
must
that's
be
'cause
how
they were
badly they
yeah,
flopped.
Exactly. So they run around for like 12 minutes. There's some characterization stuff. There's a strained relationship between Tony and Ambrose, I guess.
Yeah, Tony's Ambrose's dad, which I didn't even realize till episode 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so Elliot gets abducted by
Right,
an unknown assailant. Also, they've met up with Rory again. They go back into the village, and the Doctor and Tony and Nazarene meet up with Ambrose, Elliot, and Rory, and that's when they go to the church. So they're all together. And then Elliot goes home to get headphones, but he gets abducted.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, a good moment for the Doctor, because the Doctor, looks at Elliot and he's like, of course I'm going to... This is actually reminiscent of the 11th hour when, he tells young Amy, like, when adults say they've got it covered, well, they never do. And, he looks right at Elliot and he's like, yeah, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to save everyone and you're all just going to be A-okay. And then he just ignores
I
Elliot.
mean, he would have saved everyone if it weren't for bloody Ambrose.
Sure, but like in this moment, the Doctor is so full of himself and, he just lets Elliot get captured.
This is
So it's
true.
a character moment, I guess, for the 11th Doctor. Not that it was achieved in that great of a way, because the directing in this wasn't that great. I mean,
I think it's her first time on Doctor Who as director, Ashley Way. I think this is her first... Yeah, this is her first Doctor Who episode that apparently it's a guy, directed. That's my mistake for assuming that it was a girl because he was named Ashley.
yeah, Ashley's a male name as well, which is less common, I think.
Yeah, drastically less common, hence my mistake. But he's apparently also directed for Torchwood. Before this, he directed multiple episodes of Torchwood.
Torchwood team on this.
Anyway, by they I mean Elliot, because we're going to talk about the most productive 12 minutes of our life again, because Elliot draws a super detailed map of the entire village in like 5 minutes. And yeah, so he goes home to get headphones, and then he gets abducted by an unknown assailant. He's like banging on the door to the church, and they're trying to let him in, and then he just stops, and they open the door, and he's gone.
Yep.
So the church is like filled with like random boxes of junk.
Well,
Seems
I
like they're using
think-
this church as a storage room.
Yeah. That's why I didn't know if it was like a shed to the church or, whatever.
Well, so the Doctor goes outside with these sunglasses that are like heat-seeking, and he's looking around, and he doesn't see the monster, and he's like, cold-blooded. I know what you are. Then him and Rory capture one of them and shove it in the van, and he goes, yep, so it's a Silurian. And Rory's like, what the hell is a Silurian? He's like, well, they've been here before you. They live underground. So they take the Silurian inside, and she reveals that her name is Alea. Alea and also Restak are played by Neve McIntosh. I think that's how you say that. Who comes back as another Silurian later on. She just becomes like, I guess, the Silurian, kind of like how Nicholas Briggs became the Daleks.
All right. Well, Alea and Restak are sisters, so it makes sense that they would be played by the same person here.
Right.
Also makes sense from a budget perspective.
Since they never appear in a scene together. Although they do look different. They did make an effort to make their costumes different.
Yeah, costume-wise, they look different.
Yeah.
They probably look different in terms of the prosthetics in some way as well, but I didn't... Or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know for sure.
Well, I noticed that they looked at least slightly different prosthetic-wise, so... At least a little different.
So they throw Alea, just in the corner of this shed, and this is actually where you get the Silurian sort of reveal, because she's actually wearing a mask.
Which makes it look a lot like the Sea Devils, but also the Merca.
Yeah, the mask, it looks reminiscent of the Sea Devils and the Merca and the earlier Silurians as well. Mm-hmm. And then she takes it off, and you see the face looks a lot more human.
Yeah. The guns were apparently explicitly designed to look like the Sea Devil guns from the Sea Devils, which I think is also another Third Doctor throwback. And Alea basically reveals that she's not going to tell him anything, and the Doctor's like, well, that's fine, we'll just exchange you for their hostages.
Elliot.
Yeah, for Elliot and Mo, who's also down there, and Amy.
Right.
And Alea's like, yeah, right.
But Tony has also been attacked. He's been stung. I guess the Silurians have a new power, which is that they have really long tongues that can envenom people.
Well, so this was designed to replace the missing third eye. This tongue thing.
Well, these are also... I liked what they did here because these Silurians are sort of disconnected from the ones we knew. So there's multiple different societies underground.
Right, so the Doctor says this when he goes down, but this is a good time to bring it up. Like, he talks with him and he says, I encountered an entirely different tribe. He calls them a tribe of Silurians.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, more of our race survived? Because I guess they didn't know. And he's like, well... Oh my
survived,
God.
I mean, the best way to put it.
Well, they survived until they met the Brigadier, and then...
Well, this story has a lot of direct similarities to Doctor Who and the Silurians. Can't forget that it has Doctor Who in the title.
I prefer to just call it the Silurians. It's shorter and easier to say.
But we have the older sort of generation, and then we have the upstarts who want to start this war and reclaim the Earth. And then we have the Doctors, this pacifying force, and then we have, the Brig and the Silurians and UNIT in general, I guess. And then just Ambrose here who want to stir things up.
Yeah, I mean, Restak really is the upstart Silurian of this.
Yeah.
God, really bringing back that meme that we started back in the Silurians. I mean, based on the original definition of the word meme, it is a meme, but just that in-joke we created with the upstart Silurian.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah.
But
I don't think this is a digression, but I don't think meme means funny picture with text on it. As much as people say it, I don't think it's morphed into that as much as people say it has. Do you know what I mean? I still think it retains, the original meaning of it.
I disagree. Because how many people would you talk to on the streets who know the original meaning?
I mean, I don't know. I get that feeling that it has still...
I feel like if you just asked people what the definition of meme is, they wouldn't know what the original meaning is. And frankly, I only know it because of this podcast. So...
Because of the repeating meme?
Yeah.
But anyway, that's, regardless of that, doesn't really matter, I guess.
Well, anyway, the upstart Silurian Restak is well, so here are the players. There's Restak and there's Malakeh. Now, I found out that apparently these are corruptions of two names of people who worked on the classic series. Now, Malakeh...
Where did you find this out? The wiki?
No. Different website. Malakeh is apparently a corruption, this one's very obvious, of Malcolm Hulke.
Yeah. Who created the Silurians, I think.
Yeah, did he? I don't remember, but he did write the Faceless Ones, which I do remember. And then Restak, this one I don't get, and I don't necessarily buy either. Restak is apparently Terrence Dicks. So...
All right. I mean, sure. If they say so.
Yeah.
If you say so.
So Malakeh is a scientist, and he has apparently dissected Mo alive.
Yep. Vivisected, I guess.
Although he's still alive, so I guess he put everything back. And now he apparently plans to do the same to Amy, but as he's going to do it, they get an alert that there's intruders, and it's the Doctor and Nazreen.
Right, because the Doctor
take
and
the TARDIS
Nazreen,
down.
Yeah, they left Rory, Tony, and
charge.
Ambrose to look after Alea. And the
they
Doctor's
left
like,
Rory
don't
in
do anything
charge.
rash. Don't hurt her. But Alea has already, said, I know which one of you is going to kill me, and it's going to start this war between us
I really
and
thought
you.
it was going to be Tony.
I thought it was going to be Rory. Just going into this episode, knowing that Rory dies, I thought it was, he was going to be the
You
one
spoiled
stirring
that for yourself.
things up.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I did. But no, I wouldn't have guessed
Ambrose.
that Ambrose was going to be the one. But
I really thought it was going to be Tony because he was dying from
Yeah.
the Silurian bite, so I thought it was going to be him. I knew it wouldn't be Rory because he's the most pure creature in all of creation. Also, he's a nurse. Do no harm. Yeah, that's the thing.
I also just realized I don't know why I didn't even get this because it's really painfully obvious is the competition between the Doctor and Rory's a
Yeah.
nurse. Yeah, I didn't get that until now.
Yeah, but let me try that sentence again. It becomes a lot more obvious. I don't want to say when it becomes more obvious, but it becomes more obvious. That competition becomes more
What,
obvious.
that Rory is just the Doctor but with much less cool things about him?
Oh no, he gets way cooler
He's
later
cool in
on.
this. He's I think he's better than the Doctor in this story.
Yeah.
Which is
I actually
surprising.
don't really like the 11th Doctor as much as a lot of people seem to. So maybe I'm just hating on Matt Smith. I don't know. But I like Rory
Well, I
better
don't
than
think-
the 11th Doctor.
I don't think
so-
Matt's from an acting and episode making perspective. I don't think Matt Smith is bad.
No.
I think I didn't like him in this episode, but overall he's been pretty good.
Yeah. No, acting wise he's pretty good. I just like the 11th Doctor less than a lot of people seem to. Which is something we're going to talk about in a year from now.
Anyway, the Doctor and Nazreen are down underground and they're exploring this sort of Silurian city. The Doctor makes this funny comment. He's like, yeah, maybe, it's just a single group who survived, maybe 12, 13 of them. He looks over his shoulder and there's this massive sprawling city. Like, oh, never mind.
Well, they get captured and they get taken to Restak.
Yeah, and you think Restak's in charge, actually.
Yeah, well,
And
she
she's
is.
in some way is, because she just didn't wake up the people who were above her.
Well, she is right now because apparently she's in charge of protection and Malika is just there to do science things. And they start running this decontamination program on the Doctor. And he's like, I'm not human. It's going to kill me. And he's like, oh, wait, you're right. The scans say you have 2 hearts. He's like, yeah. There's also a scene with the 11th Doctor and Alea that I want to bring up because it's actually kind of important where Alea's like, I'm the last of my species. And the Doctor's like, no, you're not because I'm the last of my species. And I know what it feels like to be the last of your species. And you look nothing like you're the last of
Right.
your species.
So, I mean,
Or
obviously,
race.
Alea isn't, too great of a person either, right? Her whole aim here is to start this sort of war.
Well, yeah, and Restak as well. And that's why when the Doctor leaves, he tells them they have to be better than the Silurians and they have to be the best of humanity for the next, 4 hours or whatever. You would think that would be easy. You would think a command like, don't kill this person would be easy to execute. The Doctor and Nazreen are captured, but at the same time, Amy and Mo are able to escape.
Yeah, Amy picks Malakay's pocket.
Yeah.
They escape and they find out they find the sort of platform elevator type thing, but it's just a single platform that the Silurians use to ride up to the surface.
Yeah.
That's our ticket out of here, but they don't take it yet.
Yeah, because they're like, we want to explore more. They end up running into the Doctor, and they're in this kind of council chamber. And Malakay brings in... This is the one guy's name who I don't remember from this story.
What, the leader? Well, because
Eldane.
someone's about to die because they
Yeah, Restak contacts the surface, like, we're going to kill Amy.
yeah what's the word? What's the word?
Not remembering
Streams this
Yeah.
this footage to this computer that's sort of in the corner. So Rory is watching all of this and he thinks Amy's dead for a minute.
Well, yeah, because he's like, I speak for them, and then Restak's like, let me see Alea, and Ambrose suddenly takes up, no, give us the people back. And then Restak's like, well, how about I just kill Amy
I
then?
thought this was actually kind of funny. Alea's just sitting there dead in the corner because at this point Ambrose has already tased her to death.
Yeah, apparently tasers can kill the Silurians.
Yeah. Well, they are very similar to humans, so, you can get tased to death.
You can get tased to death, yes. However, not from the low power taser
Okay, well,
that
like, it's
Ambrose has.
a story, just go with it. and Restak is like, all right, let me see Alea or I'm going to kill your buddies here. And they're just like, just pulling at their collar.
And then Ambrose is like, no.
What they should have done is they should have had...
Weekend at Bernie's this.
What?
Weekend at Bernie's is a movie where somebody accidentally dies and then they like pretend he's alive for the whole weekend. They like carry around this dead body and
I
like,
should have done exactly that.
and they like move his head around and they're like, oh yeah, he's just like put sunglasses on. It's like, yeah, he's just sleeping in the back.
Well, they don't do that. But Amy is saved by this sort of elder guy. This
Named Eldane.
Really? That was his name?
Yeah. That's his name. Eldane.
All right. He comes in, he's like, what are you guys doing here?
He's like, Restak, what are you doing? She's like,
care to explain this, Restak? He calls out Restak. He's like, you're not our leader, Restak. You're just our protector.
You're just the upstart Silurian of this story. And she's like, Yeah, while she tries to stage a military coup, she goes and awakens a bunch of, I guess, warriors.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the Doctor basically tells Eldane to sit down with Nazreen and Amy and work out some details.
To negotiate the logistics of, like, the Silurians coming back to the surface, which also happened in Doctor Who and the Silurians.
Right. There's also narration in this story, which we forgot to mention. The second episode starts with narration from Eldane, which apparently wasn't in the original script. And there's now a montage of Amy looking extremely bored and uncaring about these negotiations, with Eldane talking about how the future of our species hung in the balance.
Right. Well, the narration is from, the Doctor gives him 1,000 years at the end or whatever. And he's like, hopefully humanity will be better in 1,000 years. And this narration is like from 1,000 years in the future, looking back on the Doctor saying this. But here's the thing about these negotiations. This is another callback, I think, to the earlier era of like, just midway through the story, things just come to a halt. And it's either just standing around and like talking in corridors or just a lot of running in corridors. And this is kind of, what this is. There's discussion with Malakay as to what's going on and why Elliot is safe and all of that. And there's the discussion between Eldane and Amy and Nazreen.
Yeah.
And they're not, but like, you look on this and you're like, okay, I get it in the context of the story. Like, what else could this be? But this is just two random people discussing the future of humanity with, the leader of this one Silurian group.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's okay because
off.
Rory walks in with a body and he drops it and the Doctor's like, tell me you didn't. And Rory's like, wasn't me, it wasn't me.
Yeah, Rory actually, we didn't mention this, but Rory actually tries to save Alea, but it's too late. She's already dead.
I mean, Rory is awesome in this story.
Yeah,
I love Rory.
He really is, yeah.
Yeah, because he also tries to save Tony because Tony reveals that he's got the thing in him, and that's why Ambrose kills Alea, because she finds out that Tony's freaking dying.
And it's turning him into a Silurian or like a hybrid
something
Silurian.
Like that. Yeah, like a hybrid.
Human. And here's the thing, and I guess I'll just mention this now of Rory being awesome in this, is that it feels a little off. Because he's been so not awesome, and then all of a sudden we get this.
His character development.
And
he dies, so it doesn't matter.
But with a character like Mickey, it's a lot more gradual. And I guess that just goes back to the ramped up pace of this season.
Yeah. Everything's happening all at once. Wow. That's weird, possible foreshadowing, but probably not. And
what?
I forgot what I was going to say in the middle of that sentence.
Well, they're having these discussions, and Amy suggests, as I think someone suggested in the Silurians, of like, well, what if the Silurians lived in this uninhabitable desert?
Because the desert would be hospitable to lizards. Well, I guess. But anyway. The Doctor actually
then-
barely calls them Silurians in this. He keeps calling them Homo reptilia for like the entire story. Which
Yeah,
make whatever you want of
He
that.
gives a couple different names. He's like also the Homo reptilia, also known as the Silurians, also known as the whatever. There was some other name to them. Nazarene sort of pulls Amy aside, and she's like, "Well, what happens when they multiply?"
Well, yeah, what happens when their population reaches the population of humans right now? Because there's 6 billion humans on Earth. And then,
Eldane suggests, like, well, we can come up with new advances in medicine and stuff that you guys need and don't have, and
well, the
we can help
Silurians
you
are like
out.
way more technologically advanced than the humans. So,
In some ways,
in a lot of ways.
in a lot of ways. I mean, in the ways
They
we
have
see,
cryo freezing.
and they can live like under the surface of the earth and build these giant cities and stuff. So
Yeah, they also mention, Restak mentions that the reason why she wants to start a war is because she thinks that the humans are trying to start a war with the drill. Like, the drill apparently started drilling into their oxygen pockets that they were using to, like, survive. And so they believed it was like a weapon. Of course, they get Ambrose, Rory, and then bring down the party. And then Restak comes out, I want to see Alea. And they're like, well, she's there. She's dead. And then Ambrose like, it was me. And then Elliot's like, what the hell, Mom? Like, runs away. And Mo just gives her a disgusted look. And she's like,
she tries to justify it, and in some ways
and she
this
was
is
just
kind
like,
of justified. Maybe not. Maybe it isn't done in the best way on screen because her actor's not that great. But she says, like, I was just worried about my family, and she was egging me on, and we didn't mention that Alea is very much egging her on. Alea realizes that if she dies here, it'll start this war.
right.
So that's why she's very much okay with dying at the hands of Ambrose.
I mean, yeah. But Rory counters with, well, if you had just trusted the Doctor, it would have worked. And the Doctor counters with this. He's like, man, it was about to work. Look, I already got all the hostages here for the exchange. All you had to do is bring Alea down alive, and you buggered it up.
Well, that's the other good thing about Rory in this story is Rory is always, not always, in the couple stories he's been in, has been a character who stands up against the Doctor and calls the Doctor out on his shenanigans when that's usually never been the case. But, behind, he doesn't smack talk the Doctor behind his back. He when it's just him and Ambrose and Tony, he's like, yeah, I trust the Doctor. We should, listen to the Doctor because he's gotten me through some pretty bad situations, and I trust him here as well.
Right. That's something I want to talk about at the end, too. But basically, Restak is like, no, Alea's dead. And she's like, kill them all. And I was like, well, guess we're going to run now. And so they run away. And Malachite is dead, by the way. He gets shot by Restak because he notices her opening up all the soldier pods. And
Right. We didn't
kills him.
even mention the sort of look of all of this. A lot of the cave systems look like the old Silurian base, but better, which was great.
makes sense. Which is what you would expect. Kind of like the Silurian costumes, which actually look pretty similar, save for the third eye, just better.
Yeah, I guess.
I really like the Silurian costumes, actually. Like, I feel like they put a lot of work into them, and they look really good, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
It's one of the best parts of the story, actually. Silurian prosthetics and outfits. Eldane goes with the Doctor, and then Ambrose reveals the reason why they're running. Ambrose reveals that she and Tony set the drill to start up again in 15 minutes and drill into the city and kill all Silurians.
Oh yeah.
And the Doctor's like, what? What?
I guess this is another one of those things of like everyone here being extremely productive because like when did they have the time to go and do this? I guess there was enough time.
Well, there was that scene where Ambrose is like, look, we got to go do this, Tony. And Tony's like, I don't want to do it. And Ambrose is like, just come with me, Tony, and do it. And Rory's like, what the hell are you guys doing? They're like, we got to go do something. We'll meet you at the freaking elevator.
Oh, I don't remember that at all. Maybe because like when it's happening, you don't really know what it is. So.
Yeah. But then they reveal the drill is going to drill into the city and kill the Silurians, which then really that's when I lost sympathy for Ambrose. It was like, okay, killing Alea, that was a mistake. But setting this drill to kill all the Silurians, that was an active choice that you made to kill everyone. To commit genocide. So...
Yep.
Never really forgave the brig for doing that either, so...
Yeah. I mean, the brig, like, there's so much more to the brig after that you can
That's
discuss.
true.
That you can discuss the brig without looking at that in particular. But there's less.
Well,
with
also the
Ambrose, so, like,
brig, the Doctor tears the Brig apart about
Yeah,
that
he
for the
does.
next 3 stories, and the Brig actually seems to show some genuine remorse at doing it. Whereas by the end of the story, Ambrose is just like, yeah, well, that was a thing that happened, and the Doc's like, you got to show your kid to be better than you are, woman.
Elliot already has the right idea. The doctor says like he gives the eye for an eye speech thing to Elliot or something along those lines. I don't remember if that was exactly
Well, he says
it.
that.
He says that at the end, but he says something else to Elliot.
Yeah, because they're there in the room, and Tony's dying, and he's getting into the decontamination chamber because the program should remove the Silurian virus or whatever it is. And the Doctor says, well, maybe it should be time for the Silurians to come up. Even if they're not ready, maybe they should be. Why is it so hard? And then Elliot's like, I got you, man. Because the Doctor's like, pass down this legend for 1,000 years. Make sure that they're ready in 1,000 years for the Silurians to come back. And Elliot's like, yeah, I got you, man.
Flashes a thumbs up or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's already better at it than his mom. And I guess Mo is also on board too because he was dissected by Malakay. And he's totally forgiving as well.
Well, yeah. And so the Doctor's like, well, let's go. We're going to go to the TARDIS and we'll leave. And then Nazreen's like, no, I'm going to stay with Tony because Tony's going to stay in the city because they don't have enough time to run the decontamination program because Eldane's like, well, if we have this... Apparently, we have this system where we could just flood the city with toxic gas that'll kill everything.
Yeah.
So I'm going to activate that, and also they should all just go back to their hibernation pods unless they're crazy enough to follow Restak to their deaths. And the only one crazy enough to do that apparently is Restak.
Yeah, because Restak is sort of leading this group of soldier warriors, whatever they are, I guess. And once the gas starts flooding in, they all run back to, I guess, their hibernation chambers.
Yeah, and
we
Restak's
don't know if they
no.
make it back, I guess. Maybe they all die on the way
No, we
there.
do. We see some scenes of them getting into the pods.
Oh, okay, I remember that. But anyway, Restak is like, I'm going to go on and got to start this war between me and
between me and the Doctor,
and the Doctor and anyone else with him. But she dies.
Well, not yet.
She tries to kill the Doctor, but
Well,
doesn't
not yet.
work.
Nazreen stays behind.
Yeah, she stays
first.
behind.
Then they get to the TARDIS. Everybody gets in except for Amy and Rory and the Doctor because they stay out because they see a crack in space and
Yeah,
time.
they see the crack.
And the Doctor's like, well, whatever
It's getting
bigger.
I didn't realize it was getting wider, and they flashed back to the 11th hour, and the crack was
Pencil thin.
yeah, and I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I guess it was gradual enough that I didn't realize it. But hey,
And the Doc's like, well, wherever there's an explosion, because he says an explosion must have caused these cracks, because they're all throughout time. He says they're shrapnel, so he reaches in and grabs something in great pain, and he pulls it out, and he's like, I don't know what it is yet.
yeah, and there's this line here from Rory, which makes me think that Rory somehow knows more than he's letting on about this, because there's this line that's like, Doctor, you can't put your hand in there, when Rory isn't like that familiar with the cracks anyway.
That's true, and also, why can the Doctor put his hand in there? Because Rory gets erased from time as soon as the time energy touches him, but the Doctor just sticks his hand straight in there.
Rory starts getting erased like this as soon as the thing touches like his foot.
But the Doctor just sticks his hand straight in
Some Time
there.
Lord thing or whatever.
Then Restak crawls in and tries to shoot the Doctor, but Rory takes the bullet for him
Or the blast.
and starts dying. And they're like, oh no, Rory's dead. Karen Gillan really underacts the fact that her fiancé just freaking died in her arms.
Yeah, well, this might go back to, the idea that she's torn between the Doctor and Rory or whatever.
Yeah,
But still, this
Yeah.
whole thing was actually underacted really from everyone. The entire episode, not just this scene.
Arthur Darvill, like I said, apparently didn't know they'd be coming back for any more stories set after this when this was filmed, because it was the first story he was in that was filmed besides 11th Hour. So he wasn't actually sure if he was going to appear ever again after this. No spoilers.
He is.
Well, you don't know that. It could all be set before the story.
I know pretty well what's going to happen, I think.
You'd be surprised. And the Doctor and Amy run into the TARDIS and they leave. There's absolutely no reason why they can't just drag Rory's body into the TARDIS, because there is a moment between when he dies, before the time energy gets to him, that they could have just dragged his body into the TARDIS, but they don't.
Well, it's already actually, it's done like very, I think, vaguely on screen, but you do see it sort of touching the bottom of his foot, the time energy or whatever, sort of weaving its way up his leg, I guess. And the Doctor's like, it's already got at him. There's nothing we can do. It's already touched him like in the most minuscule amount, and that's enough.
So they get inside the TARDIS, and Amy's like,
doctor
"Well, I won't
tries-
forget him, right? Because I'm a time traveler." And the doctor's like, "No, actually, because
Actually,
he's
that's not how it works.
Yeah, because he's a time traveler too, because he's traveled with you, and because this is your own personal history. Actually, yeah, you can totally forget him. So I need you to concentrate on him like right
yeah,
now."
there's a tense scene actually, and I think this is one of the best of the story, which just goes to show you how kind of just there everything else is when like this scene could have happened in any story, right? It doesn't have any of the Silurians or any of the people story specific characters or whatever, but Amy tries to remember Rory as hard as she can, and the doctor's trying to get her to do that as well, but it doesn't work. She forgets him by the end of the scene.
Yeah, because there's a distraction that distracts her because the TARDIS lands like really bumpily, and then she falls over, and that distraction causes her to forget for a moment, and then he's gone. They drop everybody else off. Amy sees only herself on the hill across the way now, and she's like, I could have sworn someone else was there. And the doctor's like, well, the doctor still remembers Rory. Because Rory wasn't part of his timeline, so he can still remember Rory. And that's actually something that'll be brought up next week as a brief preview. The reason for next week's story is the doctor takes Amy somewhere supposedly vaguely happy to meet Van Gogh. And Amy goes into the TARDIS, and the doctor pulls out the piece of shrapnel, and it's revealed that it's a piece of the TARDIS.
Yep.
Which is your first indication that the cracks are actually not following Amy, they're following the TARDIS. But anyway.
Oh, well, I mean, I didn't put that together from this, but sure.
That's what I get from this, anyway.
Well, you already know what's going to happen, too. So.
Yeah. I guess. Although, yeah.
We get a preview, like you mentioned, which I didn't know. I knew the title Vincent and the Doctor.
Yeah.
Partly because you keep raving about it, and partly because I just knew it from looking at the episode list and whatever. I didn't know it was Vincent Van Gogh.
Yeah. Van Gogh.
Yeah, as they pronounce it here.
As it's actually correctly pronounced, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I think Van Gogh is just an Anglicanation.
Anglicization.
Yeah, that word. Anglicanization of his name, because he's Dutch, I think?
I don't know what he is.
I think it's... Actually, no. Maybe not Dutch. He's not English. And yeah, so that's the end of the story. Doctor goes into the TARDIS and it dematerializes. We forgot to mention the weird scene where the Doctor eats some of the blue grass, and he's like, yep, tastes like blue grass.
What,
like,
way at the beginning?
Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to talk about Rory and the Doctor's relationship in this, because not only does Rory not badmouth the Doctor when the Doctor's away, the Doctor mentions, even though Rory's been basically up in his face about all these things, the Doctor, when he's talking with Malika and Amy and Nazreen, is like, oh, I trust Rory with like my life too. Basically showing that there's like this mutual trust and respect between the two, that even though Rory's like, yo, what you're doing, that's not okay, they both still respect each other, I think, which is really interesting.
There's probably a lot between, in terms of the expanded stuff, between like last week and this week.
Possibly.
Between Amy's choice and this,
Well, I mean,
They're planning on going to Rio.
We could just definitively find out. We just go to the if you didn't know this, the wiki makes attempts at making a timeline.
Yeah, I think I've looked at a couple of these pages.
Each of the Doctors. And
yeah, I've looked at this like for a minute or two for some of the Doctors. I was just like, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't really care, but
so I mean, like, they try to place all the stories based on what's referenced inside the story. I mean, yeah. I mean, I told you it was pretty insane. So
yeah.
Anyways, there's apparently 3 prose stories that are explicitly mentioned or believed to take place between Amy's Choice and Hungry Earth.
Sure. So they had enough time to bond or whatever.
Yeah, I guess. One of these is called Nuclear Time.
All right, sounds
Apparently set in
interesting,
Colorado
I guess.
in 1981. Wow, I don't know why I'm looking at these. The Glamour Chase. The King's Dragon. That's the coolest sounding one. Wow, that cover, though, is extremely questionable. Anyway.
And extreme.
And extreme. Maybe we'll read one of those stories for the retrospective.
Maybe,
I don't know.
yeah.
We'll have to figure out what we're
Possibly.
going to do for the retrospective in
Read the King's...
6 months.
Yeah. King's Dragon. I would read the King's Dragon. I don't know what it's about, but I would read it.
So, yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that mutual respect that the Doctor and Rory seem to share, which is, I think, nice that they respect each other enough to call each other out on their faults.
Yeah, I like it.
See, I also wanted to talk about the Doctor's I don't use weapons thing, because
Yeah.
apparently Matt Smith intentionally held the sonic screwdriver in an upright position when he used it to disarm the Silurians, and not he didn't point it at them, because
all right.
Matt Smith was like, it's not a weapon, so I shouldn't use it like one. That's why he makes a conscious choice to hold it in the vertical position. However, if you look carefully in some of the shots from behind the Doctor, because it flips between the shot of the Doctor and the shot of the Silurians. The shot of the Silurians is
Sure, I
behind
mean,
the
I
Doctor.
don't explicitly remember, but sure.
The shots from behind the Doctor, he's holding it horizontal, but then the shots front on with the Doctor, he's holding it
All
vertically.
right. Yeah, I mean, I get what
Which
he's
is just
going.
a production error.
I mean, I get what he's going for, but even him holding it towards with it pointed at the Silurians, I don't connect that with a gun or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe that's just because I've watched so many episodes.
I mean, that's something that Stephen Moffat actually brings back in the Day of the Doctor, where both the 10th and 11th Doctors hold their sonic screwdrivers pointing at someone, and then the War Doctor's just like, what are you going to do with that? It's not a weapon. You're not going to just assemble a cabinet at them, right? Why are you doing that?
I mean, it can definitely be used for defense. It's blowing, he's using it to blow the
Yeah.
guns out of the Silurians' hands in this. But I also,
Right.
I mean, yeah, all right, never mind.
Well, that's all I really wanted to talk about here. And the fact that nothing really happens in this story. There's just a lot of talking and walking
Yeah,
between
it's like
places.
a classic story.
Yeah, it's like a classic
It's.
story.
I wanted to mention some of the you mentioned some of what I wanted to mention, which is the Doctor doesn't use weapon stuff, and I actually touched on what I wanted to say there earlier, which is that it feels very newcomer friendly in a way that a lot of stories don't, and I wonder why the reasoning or why that was done, or if am I just reading too much into it, or I don't freaking know, but whatever. I also just wanted to mention another way in which this reminds me of an early Third Doctor episode, like a season 7 type thing, of just the darkness of this story. There's this bleakness into what's even going on here. We have this project that sounds like a really bit we don't know what this project really is, and it sounds like a terrible idea, right?
Sounds
Just
like a
drilling-
monument to human hubris, really.
yeah. There's already a despair in that, especially when you think of all right, digging underground, eventually you're going to have to stop, and what's it all going to come to, right?
Yeah.
Just a giant hole in the ground. But there's also when Ambrose examines her,
Ambrose examines the prince.
God. When Ambrose examines Tony, because Tony's trying to hide the scar from the Silurian attack.
Well, it's turning his veins green,
Right.
which you didn't mention.
He's trying to hide that, and Ambrose is like, come on, Dad, I know something's wrong with you. Let me see what it is. And she just looks, and in that moment, and this actually I think is a good moment of acting between them, one of the only ones in the story, is there's just so much despair. She just looks at him. She's she says, you're going to be all right. We're going to make it through this. But you can tell on their faces, they're both thinking you're going to die today.
Right.
And it just all feels very oppressive.
I agree. Also, contributing to that is the visuals of the story are just very dim. The greens aren't very vibrant, except for the Silurians. All the colors are just not vibrant in the story at all.
Yeah,
It feels
it's a
everything
cloudy
is
day.
very muted.
It's a cloudy day in Britain, so
But it feels like all the colors are intentionally muted in this story. When the shots on the hill, it feels very just kind of weirdly muted, which is probably a directorial choice, but kind of
this is
just adding
also-
to the bleakness.
Yeah, also this is an extremely small either village or just community that exists around this project. It's sort of disconnected from everything else too. So it feels really lonely to be out here and working on this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I really had to say.
Yeah, that's all I had to say. 3 weeks we'll be done with this season.
Yeah, it's
And then we're
approaching fast.
going to get to some real shit.
You know, when you say that, do you mean it's going to be like real exciting and crazy, or like it's going to be real bad and not enjoyable?
Well, do you remember when I said Stephen Moffat reaches a point where he realizes he goes too far?
Yeah, I guess. It's next season.
In my opinion. Anyway. I'm having a much harder time apparently not spoiling the Stephen Moffat era than the Russell T era.
I mean, I don't care. I've spoiled enough already, and
anyway,
I don't consider spoilers to be that, like, bad, honestly.
I should try to do it less, though, because we got that complaint on Zenith about it.
Yeah.
Not that anyone complains on this show, because no one actually emails us, although if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decadentvegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the Silurian redesign. You can find us on YouTube at Decadent Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show, and by the time that this has gone out, we'll have released a revamped version of an Unearthly Child episode. Finally, it'll have been backdated to replace the one that was in the feed originally, although presumably if Apple Podcasts works the way I believe it does, it should appear as new for anybody currently subscribed to the podcast because you won't have listened to it. So that'll be out if you'd like to listen to it. So check that out as well.
Yeah, check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast. Follow us on Twitter. And next time, we're watching Vincent and the Doctor. But until then, the end.